All right, we are recording. For the second round, again, motion this House believes that national schools should go fully digital. In the government, we have Mendez, and in opposition, we have Cing. All right. So I am very honored to welcome both teams, and we shall begin by inviting the government first speaker to nine. Time is yours.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Hello? Okay, let me set my timer, please. So if anyone wants to, POI, just unmute yourself. Mm. I'm going to start my speech in three, two, one. Panels, let's do the disclaimer. Maybe the opposition side of the house might say it is against a mechanism and a proposal. Not like not all the region in Indonesia, for example, have access to the digital learning and financial solution channel. But why then did this motion is need to be stand in the United Nations channel? That's the characterization of the current status quo problem this in channel. The pandemic and current status quo forms all the activities in minimum, for including the education activity and financial solution channel. And so the alternative is that the government tries to provide, and also the other aspects try to provide that the digital learning is something really significant and effective in current status quo problem. For example, learning from home and so on and so forth. Why? There are three main reasons of this. Why then the digital learning is something is the effective alternative. First, it's accessible. Second, it's not risky. The third is it's safe anyway because of you don't need to go out and you need to stay in a home and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen. What we mean to the national education here, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, we agree that the national education, for example, like the school that the school that have children or have students underage, for example, a senior high school, like junior high school and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen, they're still controlled by the parents in itself. Before I get into my substantive argument, I'm going to do preemptive towards this kind of motion that prevent those the opposition side of the house. We're going to might like questions during the debate. Let's talk a little preemptive about the why then it is accessible. For example, the government side of the current school already provide the quota, for example, like a quota pembelajaran and so on and so forth, that everyone will going to be, have that kind of quota. So that's why in terms of the accessible is clear, right? Secondly, secondly, they also talk about the educational researcher, for example, are trying to their base to creating a platform, for example, like to entertaining, but also an effective alternative to giving as good as possible towards the children in for example, like Ruang Guru and so on and so forth, as the alternative to, to giving a really good nuance of learning in itself, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about, so that's why that is the preemptive. Let's talk about my first argument, talk about why it is good in the end of the day. Let's characterization of pandemic in itself, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, let's agree that all the people have immune and also they have awareness and self control mechanism and also the self protection in the end of the day because it's already like being a year in pandemic in itself, ladies and gentlemen. But why it is still dangerous in terms of education, ladies and gentlemen? When the moment it comes to the education, you are not going to be you are going to be go out you are going to be practicum, you're going to be exercises, you are going to be physical contact, and potentially potentially we're going to be risky yourself to get a pandemic or corona in itself, ladies and gentlemen. What is harm when you are going when the opposition proposal imposed in this debate, ladies and gentlemen? First, let's talk about let's talk about the family itself. Let's agree that there is a family who will well educated, that will known about the corona in itself, ladies and gentlemen. But it is hard. But that is the problem, ladies and gentlemen. When the moment the family know very well about the corona in itself, it's hard for them to accept their proposal, ladies and gentlemen, because they know how harm the learning in offline in midst of pandemic. For example, they know the impact and they traumatized about the corona in itself, ladies and gentlemen. So in the end of the day, they have no choice then to put their children into the digital learning in the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. So that's why in terms of that thing, the parent will going to be have at least like a sense of relief for their children. For example, like they can control their children directly because of the worry that the children is going to be outside recklessly, and like associate with their friends without masking and so on and so forth. The secondly, they know how to entertain their children. For example, because of their growth, the children, they know how to like entertaining, and also they know how to console their children when the moment they get traumatized and so on and so forth about the learning digital learning and so on and so forth. But I'm going to be explain this more later in my second argument. But the secondly, there is a type of the family is really ignorant about the current pandemic. For example, like when they believe about the corona exists, simply they are working outside, for example, or they are poor people who really really tend to their income towards outside. For example, though they force themselves to not to believe the coronavirus in India, ladies and gentlemen. So in terms of in terms of understanding the less and minimum Indian, ladies and gentlemen. What implication when the moment they impose to the offline and go to the not to digital learning, ladies and gentlemen? First, they don't give a consent towards their children. For example, like talking about the cope mechanism, how to use self protection, how to like keeping yourself in safe and how you like face the coronavirus and what you need to do when the moment you get coronavirus and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen. So that's why this kind of type of family were going to be hampered and also harm towards the current status quo and also harm the education in the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. Why is better in our state, ladies and gentlemen? Um, even if they don't believe to the corona, ladies and gentlemen, at least they still concerned about the education, ladies and gentlemen. They poor, yes, but they don't want to their children like them anyway, like a poor anyway. So that's why they still left their children to do a lot of digital learning in the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. So that's why that is the distinguish about how this kind of people still don't believe in corona because of several reasons, but they still really concerned about the education in the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. Second argument talk about like why in our side the education system is still effective, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about the government attempt, ladies and gentlemen. As I said before, the government attempt, for example, like quota, ruang guru, and so on and so forth, right, are really massive in current status quo. For example, like the expertise as well as follow, they create an inventions about the create entertaining platform and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen. So that's what makes the digital learning effective, ladies and gentlemen. First, they can repeat the lecture in the end of the day. Second, the learning, they can the range of discussion is wide, ladies and gentlemen. For example, like they can discuss with another people, with a wider people, with a variety of perspective. Meaning that this is kind of benefit that will never be happen in offline learning, ladies and gentlemen. Whereas it will going to be hampers the learning if we force the children to go there, ladies and gentlemen. For example, like the children will eventually will limit their activities in another day. They will be going to be haunted by the anxiety. But the problem is that they will potentially get the corona and will going to be harm the family and also another society in the end, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be trade-off. Our trade-off, yes, we are going to be boring and so on and so forth, but there are several mechanisms, ladies and gentlemen. Our boring, there is a family, the sense of motherhood, for example, they have known their children really well, how to entertaining, how to really know the children. Second, this is teachers already have really concerned about how to create a learning method in a digital learning and so on and so forth that you'll have to make interesting learning. So that's why we beg to propose. Thank you.
Thank you for the first speaker. You spent 7 minutes and 28 seconds. Moment, please.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
A moment, please.
I'm looking.
I'm just reviewing some notes. A moment, please. Okay. So we call upon the first speaker of opposition. Time is yours.
All right. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. member of the house, as the government team, we are not against with the idea of digital schools, but it should be circumstantial, like in pandemic situations where we have no other choices other than having digital schools, right? We say that the government is still blur. What do they want by these motions, right? Whether is it like they're going to conduct the national schools fully, like forever, or only in circumstantial conditions, like during this virus, for example, right? Because we still do not find the urgency why that we have to change our conventional school system to the digital school system, right? But even if this motion only talking in the context of current pandemic, that we are still against with the idea that national school should go fully digital, right? Because we would like to stick in the status quo where the national schools are partial, right? Whether where it is partially conventional and also partially digital, right? Because we say that firstly they still do not, yes, they mention our idea about the idea of accessibility, right? But they do not counterproductive that point by neutralizing why the accessibility is not going to be a problem under their side the house, right? They are only mentioning it, but they do not give the solutions towards this issue, right? We say that even before the existence of coronavirus, the gap is already very high, member of the house. Like the students, the students, we know that we know that there are already segmentations in our society, right? From the richer, middle, and lower class of society. Therefore they have different accessibility towards a lot of things, including educations and accesses of internet, right? That's why, for example, every schools, for example, they produce different different qualities of students, right? Because they have because they have different accessibility, right? now talking about the fully
You all right?
digital system where no thank you, talking about the fully digital system where you only make the gap is even worse, right? Because you couldn't even solve the previous problems where the gap already exists and already very high, right? Now you only create even more problem, right? We say that not every students have proper accesses towards the digital schools, right? Even if it is accessibility, uh, and we say that even if for example it is accessible, but we still do not find the urgency why we have conducted in the very first place, right? Because if their main concern is only about the idea of pandemic, for example, we say that just because you are doing the conventional schools partially doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to neglect the protocol that already exists, right? We say that when we're going to
You all right?
conduct the conventional schools, no thank you, we are still following the proper protocols where, for example, where if they're also going to say, oh, not a lot of people are aware with the protocol with the protocols, but no, the case is the majority of people now, the majority of students, teacher, that they are wearing masks, for example, that they are washing their hands, for example. It shows to you sometimes even if their awareness is lack, but sometimes they are forced to do so. For example, students couldn't go to the class without wearing masks, for example. There's protocol that the government has already decided, and if these students, these teachers would like to continue the school activity, that they have to follow those protocols. So we say that even if in the rural areas where people are still do not believing in coronavirus, for example, but they have no other options if they would like to continue the school activity, right? So we say that the protocol COVID still can be conducted properly, and we say that it's still okay under our status quo. We also say that the government also never mentioned how effective these digital schools, right? And how this digital school could substitute the essential parts of the conventional schools that we couldn't get through digital, right? For example, the social skills, or for example the laboratorium, or something that skills that we couldn't learn only through digital, but we have to practice it. They never explain how those things will be effective under their set the house, right? But let's say if they're talking about the idea of parents, right? They said that, oh, now parents can fully control their children, right? But how effective and how significant? Because we say that it is only being a burden for the parents, right? Because we say that the reasons why parents are not homeschooling their children, because they have no other type, because they do not have that capacity, right? That's why they send their children to the conventional schools, for example, because they think that the schools are more effective to control their children, for example, because you pay the teachers to take care of your children, to control your children, right? Now why you put the burden to the parents, right? What if you never engage onto the worst scenario? What if the parents cannot fully be there for their children, right? The children are going to be even neglectful because the teachers, because the schools couldn't control them, and now the parents couldn't also control them, right? You never neutralize those worst scenario, right? We also talk about the idea of there are essential things that you cannot learn through digital, like social skills, right? Because we say that it is very different when you are doing face to face human connection, human connections, compared to the digital human interactions, compared to the digital interactions, right? We say that, for example, a lot of people are very talk active in social media, right? You think that, oh, maybe they have bond, but once they meet each other in in real life, for example, those superficial connections are not there, right? So we said that social skills is very important, and it couldn't be get through digital schools, right? Also, let's talk about the laboratorium things, right? We say that if you're simply saying that, oh, through online, like ruang guru, that we can learn anything, right? Then why what is the point of the existence of schools, right? Because if you can learn everything through online, then we shouldn't build a school, right? Because now we can learn everything through internet, for example. We can learn it through YouTube, for example. But what makes school difference, because in school you can try it, you can do it through laboratorium, for example, through teachers, for example, when you can ask, when there is mutual connections from teachers and you. For those reasons, we're very proud to propose. Thank you.
The first speaker of opposition spent 7 minutes and 29 seconds. Please give me a moment to take some notes. Okay, now we call upon the second speaker of government. Second speaker of government, Zafira, time is yours.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Okay. If you want to give me a PI, please just unmute yourself. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as a second speaker of the government team, I would like to tell you, or I would like to tell you about the government side of the house, about this our motion that we are debating today, that this house believes that national schools should go fully digital. Well, as the government team, first of all, I would like to rebuttal the arguments that given by the first speaker of the opposition team. They said that fully digital school has a different quality of accessibility, because there is so many layer of the society itself. But here the government already giving free quota data and BLT that can use by the parent students or students to fix their economic condition, right? Such as increasing their purchasing power, and they can use the money from BLT to buy goods or things or something to support learning accessibility, like handphones or laptop. And here, government is not too stupid to make the policy about to going fully digital without giving any attentions to the accessibility of the students itself, because the government look that quota data can help the students to decrease their cost to decrease their cost by buying data. So the government give a free data or BLT to the parents, student, and also the students itself um, to to support their learning process. So if the parents were truly realize about how important the educations of their children, they will prioritize the education of their children, right? So the opposition team will not do not worry about how the accessibility, how the parents will control their children, how the parents will how the learning process of the digital school will effectively I will explain it in my arguments. Okay, by applying these motions, we can make the students more safe from corona disease. As the government team, we understand that a society we're well known about the corona, about the protocol, but we still have to look about the risk of corona itself. If we force school to offline or not fully digital, because if even if the corona is not as bad as it was at the beginning, but um as we know that at school we are not only studying in the class, right? Like we are not only listening to the teacher then go home, but after school many students have to join extracurricular or so far so on. So how imagine if the students feel uncomfortable that they are to use mask more than 6 hours a day. When they are feel uncomfortable, they are will on wearing their mask, lazy to wash their hand, or maybe they can forget to bring their hand sanitizer, because the students, what we means in this motion is just underage student, ladies and so they are still not well educated about the corona disease. They are not still not well educated about the protocol. They are still lazy to use mask. They are still forget to wash their hand, particularly they are still lazy to use hand sanitizer. Even if they use hand sanitizer, even if they use mask, they're still touching their hand. Maybe they are not that the friend's hands is just their friends is also take corona disease or so on. So what is the benefit of offline school if the protocols are not applied as well? It is more better if we go fully digital than just a half struggle to apply protocol itself. If it is more better if we go fully digital than um, just apply protocol just a half in a in a student or in a school itself. Then also students knowledge about technology will develop if we are going to fully digital in a national school. In the past, or when they know about digital only about social media or watching YouTube for their consolation, but by going fully digital, they know about how to use Zoom, they know about how to use Google Classroom, they know about they know about using e-learning, cyber school, e-library, and so on. They will also to work or to learning independently on their learning process, because from fully digital they don't just sit down on their seat and listening to their teacher, but by going fully digital the student are forced to find more search like ebook, e-journal, e-model, which there are so much available on Google Scholar or e-library that can flexibility access everywhere and every time. The students also less cost to access the learning search, like because of that flexibility, which it is more effective and efficient learning process. Student has more time to learning at home without any distraction from other students, because as we know the school is so noisy and so on. Why I say that it is more effective and efficient, because the student is don't need to pay angkot or don't need to pay Gojek, don't need to pay GoCar or Grab to go to school. They don't the parents don't need to give pocket money to their children. It will take the less cost from for the students or and for the parents students itself. So it will help the economy of the students itself, right? Because they will spend less money than before. Besides, as I told you before, the students will be more safe and healthy if they are still at home. It will be more effective if the student learn about the subject, learn about their learning process. If they are healthy, right? So if they are staying home, they are healthy, they are safe from the corona disease, it will be more effective from them to learn their subject than if they are in corona disease or they are not unhealthy, but they are still have to learning, ladies and gentlemen. And also the student more flexible to learn because they can more flexible to contact the teacher. They are not only meet them in school, right? Like you can contact your teacher everywhere. Maybe like if you are not understand about the subject, if you have questions, any questions to to your teacher, you can just contact your teacher via WhatsApp or via email. You can contact, ma'am, I'm not understand with the subject, I have a questions about this. You are not just meet your teacher on school or just ask the questions. You don't need it. You can do it. You can do it everywhere and every time you want here. So, ladies and gentlemen, here by the government team, we are struggle. We are struggle to make the to convince you that go fully digital is more effective and efficient, even if there is so many changing in a learning process. But we are convinced you that it is more less cost and more safe from for the
Time is up.
students from corona disease. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The speaker spent 7 minutes and 50 seconds. To respond the case, we'd like to call upon the second speaker of opposition. Yuan, time is yours.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Need to be clarified under outside of the house. First, we don't demonize the digital way educators, right? But we question the word fully as if all school and students are ready for this new mechanism. There's no clear mechanism coming from the government, right? Because they all rely on the idea of COVID-19 is very dangerous. But like, who are you talking to? Like, what are you stand for? Are you stand for those people who are dying because of the COVID-19? Because you never clarify to us what kind of COVID-19, as if your educator doesn't know anything about this kind of material, right? But even if, for example, they talk about on the idea of COVID-19 because a lot of people are dying, we think that we have to respond to that. If they only rely on that perspective, we think that we could respond this. If this could respond all of their arguments, meaning that under opposite of the house, we deserve to be winning, right? Number one, we think that the students are not, they say that students are not educated enough about the COVID-19, right? Because they're so afraid. They assume that all of these students are very stupid and whatsoever. We say that if your problem is because of the students are not educated enough, then educate them about the COVID-19 and the problem is going to be done, right? Or even, for example, even the students are not going to be educated, right? Under outside of the house, we say that you can actually apply the healthy protocol, for example, wear your mask, your sanitizer, or whatsoever. If you, for example, feel like guilty, what if they don't do anything? Then apply kind of punishment. So the students are going to be forced by this kind of by the rule that is being conducted with the students, right? I think that those kind of arguments coming from first and second speaker are already being debunked by this, by this little analysis, right? But there's no confirmations coming from them, right? There's no confirmations coming from them, right? We see that we can see this as a bigger coup, right? Because they only playing safe by saying there's no equations. Would you apply this forever or not? Would you apply this for a month for a month because of the coronavirus? Yes, we also under observe. We see that during the crisis momentum, we also are going to apply this kind of digital way, right? Because you under outside of you need to actually take action that you are going to apply your mechanism fully educators, right? Let's assume that they are going to apply this fully, right? I want to talk about the work that we're living in current status quo. I'm going to talk about self-development. Number 3, I'm going to talk about technology is not going to happen. Going to number 1, right? What world currently we're living? First, not every student have the same accessibility to that, right? We think that some students have different mental stage, background, and whatnot. They simply not ready for that due to the economic background, because due to the economic background and whatnot. Let's be real, not everyone have money to pursue, for example, computer, internal connections for it. Some people living under poverty educators, right? So the government need to make sure that everyone would have the same privilege, which is that's not going to happen under the side of the house, right? Even when they want to say that, well, we will simply give them computer and internet connections. First, it's very simplifying the fact that some region don't have the same amount of resources to provide that from happening, right? Even in current world that we're living, some schools still look like haunted house, for example, with no facilities, and some other school look like 5-star hotel, for example. What I'm going to show you is that it shows you that the equality of infrastructure is not being spread evenly, right? There's corruption and whatnot, right? So they need to make sure that the riot that happened in current status quo is not going to happen. That's why we need to make sure that those schools already being prepared for the mechanism that is being brought by the opposition. No, thank you. Let's talk about the idea of ruang guru, and you can actually contact your teacher, because right now we are doing digital whatsoever. I think the idea of contact email and contact your teacher also happen under outside of the house, right? We never conduct that actions. Even if, for example, they talk about, we have ruang guru, right? We think that the ruang guru is very expensive. For example, 3 billion a month, for example. We say that poor people only think how to eat tomorrow, educators, right? Because not everyone has the same privilege at all. Even that's the case, right? We consider that the idea of signing up yourself to ruang guru also happen under our side of the house, right? You can actually, having school and sign up yourself to ruang guru. We don't have problems with that, right? Now, talking about the self-development, we think that learning directly in school is very essential that digital way cannot provide, right? Talking about social activity, we think that learning process directly is more effective because the students directly will learn how to make friends in school, right? They can be prepared to face the real world in the future. Because in school, cope with the fact that students would meet more people instead of only classmates that's being provided with digital only, so that the students will be more adjust to different kind of personalities of other students. So they can be more aware of other people problems or other people trait, for example, by adjusting themselves in many favor of personalities that could make the students be more understanding about other
Moment, please. Iwan, you're breaking up.
At school, expose other students' conditions with different conditions, different background and privilege, right? So the students could have empathy and understanding, because during digital, they only see their classmate, for example, in very bare minimum, right? There will be no internal connections at all, right? Why this argument is important, educators? Because under our side of the house, we consider that the purpose of school is not only about getting score, educators, but also to give the students lesson of life so they can cope and have tolerancy, even that's not have tolerances, right? Tolerancy to other students. Even that's not the case. But at least under outside of the house, there will be communal conversations that are being involved by massive amount of students. So the students will eventually have their self-development occur internally, educators, right? But technically, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, right? We think that under their side of the house, the outcome of education is not going to happen, because the system will give channel to and chance to do cheating in terms of examinations, for example. They will simply cheat and the teacher wouldn't know anything. So there will be no significant result of school. Do they cheat? We say the students already know that cheating is something bad. Narrative says so. But even cheating does exist. Under outside of the house, there will be check and balances comes from the teacher, because the teacher is their educator, right? Since we never know how right. The minor cases, child abuse, for example, child being harassed at home, for example, or being exploited by by the parents, for example. Do child abuse exist? We see that abusing your child is something that universe claims wrong, right? Even that case happen, we think under our side of the house, we think that school are going to be, safe place for them to actually escape from home, for example, so they can actually running away from that toxic environments, right? So even if bullying happen in school, for example, but at least at school, there is teacher who actually will do checks and balances. So the idea of bullying will not going to happen in school, right? We're very proud to oppose. Thank you.
Second speaker of opposition spent 7 minutes and 25 seconds. Please give me a moment to take some notes. Okay, thank you. Now we proceed to the third speaker of government. To Arafat, time is yours.
Test, am I audible?
Could you adjust your mic a little bit? It's a little bit unclear.
Hello, test.
There's
Is it
some
clear
noise.
now?
There's some noise.
Oh. What about now?
Okay, it's a little bit better, but maybe you can adjust so you're not too close to the mic. Okay, that's clear.
Okay. I was setting my timer first. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, as the government side of the house, we said that we're going to do this kind of digital school during the pandemic things, because that's the only thing that we can do, because we see that we cannot do blended learning, go for digital and conventional. That's why we're going to fully go for online or digital school in this very time crisis. 2 point of major clashes in the debate. First of all, whether or not this kind of fully digital school is going to be accessible. But second of all, whether or not it is going to be still create an effective education at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. First idea, the moment when we as the government said that it is very accessible because of a lot of government attempt coming from government side of the house, which is giving you a lot of in terms of help like BLT and so on and so forth, and also a lot of the social movements into this condition that is very care due to the people that is underprivileged, for example, on how they are going to share free smartphone, for example, free online devices for students that cannot afford for their online school things. Ladies and gentlemen, we see that this kind of accessible are already there at the very first beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, the opposition side of the house come with the idea that it is not accessible due to a lot of problem and so on and so forth, like financially unreadiness and so on and so forth. But ladies and gentlemen, we told to you that this kind of thing is still manageable, right? People are adaptive, ladies and gentlemen, because you do not have any other choices rather than try to collect your money little by little and afford for that kind of things, because life should still continue, right? And a lot of people are trying to be more adaptive, ladies and gentlemen. Take an example on how at the very first beginning of outbreak, where a lot of things are shut down that way, but during the time like 6 months and so on, people are adaptive because of these kind of things that you need to still do to be able to survive at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. And we said that people are going to still survive anyway because of the accessible and help are already there, ladies and gentlemen. But what's so exclusive in learning, in fully digital school that we're going to say here, ladies and gentlemen, because we believe that it is going to give a lot of chance to be, wider your chance to pursue your better career, ladies and gentlemen, because of a lot of case that neglected by the whole opposition benches is that when there is the online class, for example, a lot of people are trying to give compensation to it, right? Take a look the example on how free online courses are there, ladies and gentlemen, coming from free class from Oxford, for example, Harvard, for example, with bigger quota because of they recruiting people from all around the world, ladies and gentlemen, as the compensation of online school in itself. But second of all, there are also a lot of school for self-development like yoga or chemistry school or even free cooking school are already there, ladies and gentlemen. The chance of you is getting very bigger, ladies and gentlemen. Before the pandemic, you cannot even pursue for that kind of class in Oxford, but during the pandemic or digital class, you can freely go for that, ladies and gentlemen, because that is accessible for you because people are giving you as the compensation, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot pursue for that, you cannot afford for that before the pandemic, but because of this kind of things, you can go for that, ladies and gentlemen. Moreover, a lot of GSR problem are going to allocate more to education funding, ladies and gentlemen. Even education, more scholarship are giving more quota because of their realize and understand that a lot of people are need this for their survivability at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. But moreover, a lot of chance and a lot of equal opportunity are there, ladies and gentlemen, because at the end of the day, students coming from developing country, for example, like poor people can at the end of the day have that kind of opportunity to pursue better education, ladies and gentlemen. Because of, for example, like Iman Usman who go to study in Harvard, for example, it is the cost is going to be lower, ladies and gentlemen, because you should not spend more of your time for your living costs or your travel costs, for example, ladies and gentlemen, in comparison in status quo. If online class, you need to spend a lot of time to join for that kind of pushing higher and better education outside there, ladies and gentlemen. Under the moment when the world is become a fully digital school, then you're going to have a very equal opportunity to pursue a lot of and diverse career that you want, and self-developing yourself, ladies and gentlemen. That's why we said that it is very important. But now let's talking about implementing this during the pandemic, ladies and gentlemen. They said that it is bad because of we already have a lot of counterbalance mechanism, for example, the protocol, and then we are forced students, for example, to wearing masks, for example, and so on and so forth. But we believe that this kind of thing is not being habituated, ladies and gentlemen. They got an example on how the first outbreak, people are all panic buying, for example, but then it moved to normal life, and then it moved to people are being reckless, ladies and gentlemen. And to this condition, a lot of people are saying that Corona is already gone, and so on and so forth. You do not need to wear masks, and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen. This kind of things is happen, and that is going to be very bad, ladies and gentlemen, because of also the moment when you force all the students to wearing masks to enter the classes, for example. What about students coming from the ignorance family, for example? They are more likely to leaving the class simply because their family did not really care about them. Their family did not give them masks, for example, and so on and so forth. We believe that this kind of, because of the different understanding of the people toward the perceiving of coronavirus and pandemic, it is very bad for them to generalize that all people are going to be wearing masks only because of their being forced, ladies and gentlemen. Take an example on how people are being so reckless. But let's talk about socialization that they are always promoting. We believe that their socialization is not exclusive at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, because it is also not going to be effective. Why? Because the moment when their demand is socialization, then it is going to promoting the physical contact, which is very backlashing with the government purpose at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. You, even if you go to school, you cannot even really fully social distancing and so on and so forth. We say socialization under our side of the house is going to be still there, ladies and gentlemen. We're okay with the idea of superficial connection, for example, when people communicate with others through computer, for example, because we're going to still developing our skill. Take a look at an example on how we're debate online here is that we're trying to also socialize with people. We also try to self-develop and shaping our critical thinking and public speaking and so on and so forth. There are a lot of alternatives that we can get even through online things, ladies and gentlemen. Take a look at an example on how a lot of online competition at the end of the day. Debate is from offline, then it transformed to be online debate, MUN debate, a lot of innovative competition outside there, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's talk about the psychological well-being. The engagement and participation of the students in the classroom in online is going to be better because of they can freely try to chat and discuss with their friends and teachers and so on and so forth. In comparison, if we do it online, then going to be a lot of shame and so on and so forth. It's not going to happen. We oppose. Propose. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you very much. To the third speaker, we have he spent 7 minutes and 25 seconds. Please give me a moment to note. Now we call upon the third speaker of opposition, to Jay. Time is yours.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Wait, I will set up my timer first. Okay, I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. The reasons why government team proposing this kind of motions, because they believe that it could provide safety net for the students and stuff like that, right? Where the students don't need to go out of their house and they are not going to do physical contacts, which is harmful due to pandemic issues, where most of parents are going to be, most likely are going to be overprotective to their children, for example. That's very dangerous to go out from school, for example. And secondly, they also talk about how actually parents are going to be ignorant because they have narrow mindset and they won't put any kind of attention to their children, because the children in the end of the day are not going to use the mask and no longer use a sanitizer, because there will be a possibility for them to be reckless, and careless, for example. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that, it is very ashamed for governments of the house by neglecting the efforts that is provided by our current government, right? Regarding about the adjustment, we think that in current status quo, even if the problem are still there for, there are another alternative that is provided by the government in order to adjust, right? They are safe applied, for example. Only small of students are going to be able to go to school to have learning process, for example. There is morning shift, afternoon shift, for example, right? The students are not going to be, not going to go to school in huge amount of quantity, for examples, right? Because only particular students will go to schools, right? Only particular students will go every Monday and every Wednesday, for example, and other students, for example, are going to go every Tuesday and every Thursday, for example. It shows you the government already consider a lot towards the conventional system, even though we are still facing coronavirus issues, right? It shows you that conventional schools are not that bad, right? At the same time, government also creating strict regulation to do physical distancing, for example, and keep reminding the parents to emphasize to keep on telling your students to keep wearing masks and do social distancing, for example. So even at the end of the day, students are going to forget to do social distancing, for example. We think that there are role of teachers, for example, who are going to mentor and do check and balances towards the children, for example, right? Because at the end of the day, there will also be punishment will be imposed to the children, for example. Let's say their parents are going to be called to go to school, for example, right? It shows you that conventional school is not that bad after all, right? Secondly, they also talk about how actually the alternative of good nuance of learning process, for example, like Ruang Guru provide entertainment method of learning process for examples. And they are trying to say that the government and social movement, for example, already tried to give incentive and give compensation to the students. They give by giving quota data, for example, by giving laptop, for example. The question that they need to be answered is that how significant and effective it is, ladies and gentlemen. No explanation coming from government of the house, right? Within interim status quo, the spread of incentive is not even equal. The gap is very huge. There are cases, majority of students do not get any kind of incentive at all by the government, for example. and gentlemen. There are parents, there are cases, parents stealing the things and also selling their property, for example, in order in order to buy the laptop and buying mobile data, for example. It shows you this kind of it shows you the digital fully digital method of learning process is not going to be effective in the end of the day, because it is only going to give a huge burden towards the stakeholders involved, ladies and gentlemen, especially the parents, because of the government set up the house didn't even give you the didn't give you an analysis whether in the end of the day the capacity of all layers of parents are going to have a capacity in terms of financial support, for example. So at least they are going to be able to support their children, for example. Even at a very because we think that in Kiristau school, the parents are literally struggle in order to get the money, for example. Even if they work their best, for example, they can only afford 10,000 in each day, for example, right? It shows you that they are only going to jeopardize the stakeholders involved in this scenario, right? Thirdly, let's talk about how actually they are trying to say that people are going to be able to be adaptive with new conditions and situation and be able to get higher chance to pursue education, to pursue their educational career in global scale, for example. Look, we think that that's still assumptive, ladies and gentlemen, because only particular students can access those kind of advantage. Because there are also students who learn from their study of who learn from their house, for example, their main focus are going to be divided. They are not going to be fully focused on their educational, educational, right? Because they're also being pushed by their parents, for example, to go to have a work rather than participate in online classes, for example, ladies and gentlemen. So we think that the benefit that is provided by government team is untangible in the end of the day. Look, my previous speaker already told you the parameter of proper educational system and why it's very essential and important, where students are able to nurture and develop their skill and potential they have to the fullest. Look, in terms of in academic, non-academic, they can do socialization, building emotional bonding with fellow friends and teachers, for example, having ceremony having a ceremony every Monday morning, read Holy Quran every Friday, for example, do sport, skipping math class in order to buy nasi bungkus for breakfast, and you get punished together with your besties, for example. That's a very golden memories that we can only have in conventional method system, ladies and gentlemen. It's so the comparison is that in digital, the comparison is that the benefit that they are trying to provide is also exists in our side of the house, where we can still be able to contact our teacher to ask about the things that we don't understand yet. We can still be able to involve and participate in socialization, do free class from Oxford, for example. But the benefit that we provide doesn't even exist in the side of the house. It shows you that in our side of the house, by sticking in current status quo, where we are going to have a digital classes and conventional is at the same time, it's going to be beneficial and effective, ladies and gentlemen. So we're very proud to oppose the motion.
Third speaker of opposition spent 7 minutes and 38 seconds. 7 minutes, 38 seconds. All right, now we call upon the reply speakers, and let's begin with the reply speaker of opposition. To Iwan, time is yours.
Hi guys. Orang lagi azan, but okay. I'm going to start.
Sorry, Iwan. Sorry. Before you begin, the azan is quite loud, so let's just let it pass for a moment. Okay.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. 3 things that I'm going to talk I'm going to talk about 3 things in my speech. First, I'm going to talk about the accessibility. Number 2, I'm going to talk about the major point. Number 3, I'm going to talk about the benefit of the motions. Going to number 1, I think to the idea of accessibility, right? We under outside of the house, we consider that the idea of different background, economic conditions, and whatnot, poor people simply cannot survive. It's going to be major point under outside of the house, right? Because simply they don't have money to buy proper gadget and internet connection, whatnot. Knowing the fact that wealthy and resources and infrastructure are not being spread evenly by the governments, right? Corruption does exist and whatsoever. Their proposal only puts certain students suffering, right? Because we consider that the vulnerable actor in this motion is that those poor students. I'm going to talk about that later. But let's see under the side of the house, right? I think they simply say that, yeah, well, there will be quota given to the students. So we think that this are going to be enough. They say that this is going to be enough. We think that this is not going to be enough, right? Because understand that they never actually explained that it costs giving them quota. It costs government a lot of money. They never analyze that why they're losing money is going to be okay under the side of the house, right? Because the actual role of teachers under the side of the house cannot be achieved at all educators because the students simply don't have internal connections since they only rely on the screens, right? But this is the thing, right? There's an interesting point coming from them, right? First, they say that they are not educated because they claim that the students are very stupid whatsoever. We think that if your problem because of students are not educated, then educate them to actually wear masks and whatsoever. Teach them about the healthy protocol, and your problems under their side of the house are going to be solved, right? But the second argument, the second benefit coming from them is that, well, now we will eventually have chance to actually contact our teachers via email whatsoever. I think this kind of argument is very childish because that's all also happened under outside of the house, right? We never condone into that actions, right? Now, they mentioned about ruang guru, right? We say that the role of teacher is not fully effective and maximal under the side of the house because the idea of capacities and whatnot. Rich students would simply be fine, right? Even though the lack of in the role of the teachers, because they would eventually run to ruang guru, right? Because the ruang guru is very premium and they can only be achieved by these rich students, right? But consider the fact that these poor students simply cannot compete to that kind of life, right? Because the lack of resources and whatnot. The case of competition also happened under our side of the house, right? Because rich people are going to be have privilege because they're always going to be whatever. But at least under our side of the house, these vulnerable students could count to the role of the teachers, right? Because knowing the fact that there's some students need more teacher attention to understand more, right? Need more internal directional touching coming from the teachers, right? To actually create bonding between teacher and the students. So we say that these vulnerable people would eventually be more, being more understand about the teachers, the thing that the teachers give whatsoever, right? But now let's talk about the benefit, right? Under outside of the house, self-development happen under outside of the house, right? Because you can meet very diverse personalities at school, so you can cope with other background and conditions. You can eventually have empathy and whatnot, right? You can actually have toleration to other students, so you would eventually understand other student conditions. I think it's going to be matter under outside of the house because the purpose of school is not only about score educators, but also about self-development. And we see that we're very proud to say that self-development only happen under our side of the house, right? But let's see under the side of the house, they only rely on the idea of screen educators, meaning that they actually neglecting the fact to the idea of technical issue. Biasma told you educators, there will be a lot of missing evidence coming from them because you cannot simply doing sport subject on the screen educators, right? Or even science activity that requires physical touch, for example, you cannot do that under the side of. There is no rebuttal coming from them educators, right? But under our side of the house, we consider that there will be cheating chance that coming from the students because the teacher simply don't know what happened behind the door educators, right? Behind the scene, behind the need educators. So the idea of the result of the education are not going to happen under their side of the house. Even the assignment would be simply be done by their parents, right? And they would simply cheat on the Google when it comes to examinations, for example, right? So the idea of examinations, the idea of challenging is not going to happen under the side of the house. Very proud to push. Thank you.
Thank you to the reply speaker of opposition. You spent 4 minutes, 46 seconds. Now to close also the case of the government. And to also close this debate, we call upon the reply speaker of government. To 9, time is yours.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Wait a minute. Let me set my timer first. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panels, all the arguments coming from the opposition side of the house will fly when the moment they can explain about the self-development and so on and so forth. When the moment there is no risk, when the moment you're going to the conventional school. Second, why then the sacrifice the the student's life, it is okay in the end of the day when the moment they are ignorant and so forth. This kind of engagement will never be touched by the opposite side of the house at all, ladies and gentlemen. There are 4 things that I'm going to speak in my reply speaker. First, I'm going what makes our team is going to be really matters in this debate, ladies and gentlemen. We are already characterized to you. Why then? All the before you are going to be conventional side of conventional school, ladies and gentlemen, we already proved to you why then this kind of conventional school will going to be neglected and also rejected by the families. We already characterized to you, even if the family already educated enough, or even like the family already really ignorant in the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. So in this kind of acceptance, the family will never be accept the proposal coming from the opposition side of the house, ladies and gentlemen. So when the moment these kind of things will never be engaged by the government or by the opposition side of the house until the end of the speech. Secondly, talk about the effectiveness. We are in another set, ladies and gentlemen. We will talk about effectiveness, talk about how the equal opportunity that everyone can access, like the learning with another platform, for example, like in Oxford class and so on and so forth. Meaning that they will have a chance to wide and also spread their perspective towards another people with the foreign lecture, ladies and gentlemen. The effectiveness that coming from the opposition side of the house, ladies and gentlemen, the self-development of, for example, like socialization and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen. Our side of the house already proved to you why the socialization is not significant in the current to school. Because of what? When the moment you are going to be socialization, meaning that you are promoting the physical contact, meaning that it is backlashing with the idea with the purpose of the government at the first time, right? So that's why it is going to be hamper and also harm the society, and also, especially for the children, for the students in itself, ladies and gentlemen. So that's why the idea of socialization and also self-development that they glorify at the very first time will never be fly in the until the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. Thirdly, talk about the accessibility. Yes, I think there is the deadlock class because of a both of team are going to be excessively affirmed to this kind of accessible. But I'm trying to prove to you whether our accessibility is already proved is already enough. Because in current school, for example, like there are many of alternative, for example, the government institution, and also there are many of people that are campaigning about the free education and so on and so forth. There is the community that provide the free device and so on and so forth, meaning that it's already counterbalance, the counter towards the arguments coming from the opposition. The house talk about the accessibility, that the social gap and so on and so forth will never be, happen anymore. At least in our side, we are trying to prove to you why then this kind of thing, even if you are poor, you are going to be access the internet through this kind of mechanism. Fourthly, talk about the worst case in the end, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, our worst case is that I will prove to you that always fly until the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. Talk about the boring and so on and so forth. Our side of the house, for example, like there is a time of boring and so on and so forth, where there is the counter mechanism, for example, like entertainment coming from the platform, and so on and so forth. Teacher, they have a good method for learning, for online learning. For the last year about the family. Worst case in coming from the government side of the house, ladies and gentlemen, talk about the ignorance family. For example, when the moment they are recklessly, ignorance about the corona and so on and so forth, they sacrifice the children in the school, for example. Why it is okay, ladies and gentlemen, even if they are wearing masks, they are going to be really weird, and also they feel really uncomfortable with the condition, with the learning environment and so on and so forth. Why it is okay the very first time, at least in our side, we prove to you when the moment we don't want to force every individuals to wear a mask. You just stay at home and learn, and you can get the experience learning process as what you get or what you expect to. So that's all we back to propose. Thank you.
Thank you very much. To the reply speaker, you spent 4 minutes and 9 seconds. Okay, so thank you for the debate, everybody. We are going to have a 15-minute session for me to collect my notes and also prepare the verbal and also submit the ballot. So I'll meet you guys back here for the oral adjudication in 15 minutes, okay? This is, what time is this? So here on my side, it's 9:51. I'm gonna meet you guys back in, I think it, yeah, 15 minutes. So I'll see you in 15 minutes. Meet you guys back at 16:06 your time. Okay. All right. Is everybody here from government? Mendessz? You there?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. And I know that the opposition there is there, right? Everybody complete?
Yes.
Okay. So it's 10:06. We're on time. I'm going to try to deliver this as quickly as possible. And if you have any feedback later, please approach me. You know where to find me on WhatsApp. So just text me if you need feedback, okay? Especially individual feedback. All right. Okay, here we go. First things first, thank you very much for all the debaters for your participation and your efforts in debating this issue of this House believes that national schools should go fully digital. I categorize this debate as an average to slightly below average debate. Why? Because despite the speaker roles were mostly fulfilled in terms of that you both try to elaborate your arguments and supply rebuttals, examples, etc. There were some issues that were not fully developed until the end of the debate. Such issues include, for example, the idea of what it means to be fully digitalized was not really confirmed until the end of the day. What it means, for example, or the significance of these national schools itself, what's the exclusivity, etc., is not also fully developed. And also, since this is an environmental, eco debate, there was not many references or development in the sense of the environmental, aspects of this particular motion. I did not put that into my adjudication, of course, but it's just something to consider on the wider perspective for both of the teams and the examples I will follow up with later. All right, so basis of decision. Basis of decision at the end of the day was based on whose team was much more exclusive in proving, for example, their harm and benefit analysis and also their justification. So I'm going to quickly run through the arguments of each team or the major points. So in the government side of the house, basically what you propose is the idea of safety for the students as a prerequisite to effective learning. Okay, you argued on the idea and the characteristic of families having the characteristic of being different, that some families are aware of the safety protocols, for example, and other families don't even believe in coronavirus. You propose the mechanism of giving quota to decrease the cost and also of giving BLT. You also try to supply some benefits in terms of how this is going to, boost independent learning. It's going to reduce costs, for example, by, omitting the transport fee, transport costs, and also book costs by means of ebooks. And also you address the idea of more flexibility to contact teachers and, the proposition of having online debates, for example, and free courses.
Meanwhile, the opposition side of the House argued more in terms of whether or not this is going to fulfill of the idea of accessibility for everybody. You argued on the case that there is still a high gap in society regarding, poverty, regarding education itself, and regarding infrastructure. You said that the proper mechanism would be just to enforce and to enforce the protocols, the safety protocols, as a prerequisite for them to be able to go to school. And if they're unaware, just educate them, you said. You also questioned the idea of what fully digitalized means, and the terms, or the time frame in which this would happen. And you also address certain issues of the benefits of conventional education that will not be gained through digitalization. For example, you talked about social skills, you talked about lab activities, sports, golden memories, even. You talked about how the incapability of parents is going to be there, uh, of not being able to control the children, and how this is going to lead to neglect. You also talked about certain worries about cheating during the national examinations, and you talked also about the idea of non-exclusivity of check and balance and feedback of the teacher, and in monitoring, which also still happens in your case. And you also addressed the issue of how the government is also, already trying to mitigate this, and leading towards the importance of conventional education by, for example, scheduling schools at different times for different, age groups or different classes. All right. So what did I get by this? And how did I assess my education? First things first, on the idea of exclusivity, I had to consider which of your points were actually exclusive, and which of them were not, and which one at the end of the day could stay. So for the government side of the House, when you talk about the corona's harms, of course, that is conceded also by the government side of the House. Of course, we agree that we want safety for the students. And uh, your exclusivity on that doesn't have to be really proven. But what I see here is that on the notion of here, when you talk about the ignorant families, and how they're not going to be able to follow protocol, I see that the opposition has made an effort to try to neutralize this by saying that, well, the mechanism is to enforce it and enforce these protocols at school, and this is as a prerequisite to educate them in school. But what the opposition was not able to address was on the issue of safety. Could this really guarantee the safety at the school? So in terms of this, it was a little bit difficult to determine the well-being or the welfare of the students, even though the negative side of the House tried to propose a mechanism for it. There was no further analysis about this from both teams, about how severe or about the tendency of, them being submitted to harm in this situation. So this was a kind of obscure or abstract situation on the idea of harm and safety for the students, was not really proven in both cases. And the idea of feedback from the teachers, this was also not really well developed, in a sense that even if the government was talking about how the students are going to be able to email and WhatsApp the teachers, the opposition already told them that, well, this can also happen in our case. It's not really exclusive. And I do agree with this side. And I thought that was substantiated. But on the other side, when the opposition talked about, for example, bullying and things like that, and this was going to have direct check and balance by the teachers, or cheating during national examination, this was also not proven to be as exclusive to conventional learning, because, well, yeah, we know in average regional person knowledge that in conventional learning also, these cheating issues also happen. And there's no guarantee also of whether the teachers could mitigate the bullying cases. So this was also an issue. On the idea of social skills, so this was tried to be substantiated by the opposition side of the house on how, we need this empathy and tolerance and etc. But what was missing also from the arguments was why this not why this face-to-face contact is that specific and that inherent, but this was not really questioned that well from the government side either. But they did imply that, from online debates that still can happen, for example, that the socialization still exists. There's still opportunity for that. But meanwhile, on the government case also, they were not able to signify what's the importance of these free courses, especially since they set it for, high school students and etc. When they're talking about Harvard and etc., it seems a little bit too far-fetched. When they're talking about yoga, when they're talking about all these free courses that exist there, it doesn't really exclusively apply to these high school students. So on that edge also, it was a little bit obscure and abstract from both cases. The exclusivity, again, is not really proven or responded upon well. So we could say that both are not really that well developed in exclusivity, but there was also, a lack of proper or complete engagement and deconstruction from both teams regarding those points. But at the end of the day, I thought that the silver lining that I could find was on the idea of, at the end of the day, access, on the idea of how to classify or characterize this society, on whether or not this would actually be able to run well. Okay, so in the government, they talked about, again, their proposition of providing BLT, of providing quota, and etc. And their analysis of society was more on the knowledge of coronavirus and the perception towards that. Meanwhile, the government side of the house talked more on the idea of, poverty, access to internet resources, etc. At the end of the day, the team who I saw could really address logically and also more to the more in tune and sensitive towards the condition of today was actually the opposition. Why do I say this? It's because they were able to question and address the issue of the segmentation in society, about the poverty, about the access to internet, about the supplication of computers and resources. They were able to also address how these parents are actually, basic needs and their fees, their salary on monthly basis is not able to even cover basic things. And meanwhile, the government was not able to prove that the subsidy, for example, is going to be enough to neutralize the situation. It's not going to be enough. It's going to be enough to, provide this well-spread infrastructure for this to happen at the end of the day. That is why, based on those considerations, I thought that the winning should go to the opposition side of the house. In terms of what you could have added towards the debate, you could have added upon, the exclusivity of digitalization towards efforts for the environment, for example, and how actually, in the spirit of today, in which we want to, for example, reduce transportation emissions, where we want to, make everything more environmentally friendly, especially in classrooms, how digitalization can make that a reality. You could have also pursued a more long-term frame in which this is going to be a progressive thing for schools to go fully digital. And at the end of the day, you could dream a little bit, for example, about for VR technology, for labs or sports, etc. So perhaps you could have explored this a little bit further. Therefore, that's my verbal adjudication for now. If you have any more questions, please just contact me through WhatsApp. Congratulations to the winner. And for the government team, it's okay. Please keep spirited for the next round. And there's still a lot of opportunity for you to gain achievements and break to the elimination rounds. I'll see you in the next debate, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kak.
Thank you.
Thank you. You may proceed back to the main room. You may leave the room. Thank you.